Dr. Laura Hayes dragged her feet through the main concourse of Meridian Station. Her shift at the Colony Medical Bay had stretched to 14 hours, and every muscle in her body ached. The station buzzed with life around her. Traders shouted about their goods. Children laughed and ran between the legs of towering aliens. The smell of exotic foods mixed with the metallic tang of recycled air. Laura just wanted to get to her quarters and sleep. Then she heard it. A sound that cut through everything else like a knife. "Please? Somebody help. My mother won't wake up." The voice was small and desperate. Laura's head turned toward the sound. Her tired eyes searched the crowd. Near a vendor selling glowing fruits she saw him. A small alien boy knelt on the floor beside a motionless figure. His skin looked like frosted glass shimmering under the station lights. Tears rolled down his translucent cheeks. People walked past them. Some glanced over with brief concern. Most didn't even slow down. They had places to be, connections to catch. Someone else's problem. Laura felt her exhaustion fall away. Her legs moved before her brain caught up. She pushed through the crowd, her medical bag bouncing against her hip. "Hey," she said, dropping to her knees beside the boy. "I'm a doctor." "What happened?" The boy looked up at her. His eyes were huge and crystalline, like looking into clear water. Fresh tears spilled over. "My mother," he gasped. "She saw the bad men. They had guns. They were yelling and hurting people at the shop. She just fell down. She won't wake up. Please help her." Laura turned her attention to the woman lying on the cold station floor. She was Zentari like the boy. Laura had studied their species in medical school, though she'd never treated one personally. The woman's chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. Her glass-like skin had gone cloudy and dull. Her face looked peaceful, almost like she was sleeping. But something about it made Laura's instincts scream that this wasn't right. "How long has she been like this?" Laura asked, keeping her voice calm for the child's sake. 20 minutes, the boy said. His hands twisted together nervously. "Maybe more. I called for help right away. The security people came, but they said it's normal. That Zentari do this. That she'll wake up when she's ready." Laura's jaw tightened. She reached out and touched the woman's wrist. The skin was ice cold beneath her fingers. She pressed gently, searching for a pulse. There it was, but weak and irregular. Too slow. A shadow fell over them. Laura looked up to see a station security officer standing above them, his arms crossed. "Ma'am, you need to move along," he said. His voice was flat, bored. "The situation is under control." "Under control?" Laura stared at him. "This woman is unconscious on your station floor." "She's Zentari," the officer said, like that explained everything. "They enter protective comas when they experience trauma. It's their biology. She witnessed a robbery 20 minutes ago. Her system shut down to protect her. She'll wake up on her own in a few hours. Maybe a day. It always happens this way." "I'm not overreacting," the boy cried out. "Something's wrong. My father did this once when I was little. He saw a bad accident. But he woke up in an hour. It's been too long. She's not waking up." Laura pulled her medical scanner from her bag. The device hummed to life in her hand, casting a blue light over the woman's body. Numbers and readings scrolled across the small screen. Laura's heart sank as she read them. "Her neural activity is declining," Laura said sharply. She looked up at the officer. "This isn't a normal protective coma. Her brain function is dropping. Her body temperature is falling. She's not stable." The officer frowned. "That's not possible. Zentari always recover from these episodes. It's documented. They just need time." "I don't care what the documentation says." Laura's voice rose. People nearby turned to stare. "I'm looking at her vitals right now. This woman is in serious danger. We need to get her to medical immediately." "Station medical won't take her," the officer said. He actually had the nerve to sound sympathetic now. "We don't have Zentari specialists on staff. They'd need to call someone in from the Zentari homeworld. That takes days. Protocol says we wait for her to wake naturally." "Days?" Laura couldn't believe what she was hearing. "She doesn't have days. Look at these readings." She shoved her scanner toward him, but he stepped back, raising his hands. "I'm sorry, but I can't authorize emergency treatment for a condition that our medical staff isn't equipped to handle. We could make things worse. There are liability issues. Insurance. You understand." Laura wanted to scream. Instead, she looked down at the boy. He was staring at his mother, his small hands clutching the edge of her clothing. His whole body shook with silent sobs. "What's your name?" Laura asked gently. "Titorin," he whispered. Torin, how old are you? 8 cycles. That's, almost 9 of your Earth years. Okay, Torin. Laura reached out and put her hand on his shoulder. His skin felt cool through his thin shirt. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you have any other family here? Anyone we can call? Torin shook his head. More tears fell. Just Mother. My father died 2 years ago. There was an accident at his work. Mother is all I have. If she doesn't wake up. His voice broke completely. They'll send me back to our homeworld. To the children's institution. I'll be alone. Laura felt something break inside her chest. She looked at the woman again. At the child. At the crowd still flowing past them like water around stones. At the security officer who was already turning away, his duty apparently done. She thought about her own mother. About being 8 years old and terrified. About what it meant to be truly alone in the universe. Torin, she said firmly. Look at me. The boy's crystalline eyes met hers. I'm Laura Hayes and I promise you something right now. I'm not going to let anything happen to your mother. Do you understand? I'm not walking away. I'm not leaving you alone. Whatever it takes, we're going to help her. But the officer said. I don't care what he said. Laura stood up, her exhaustion completely forgotten now. Her mind was already racing through everything she knew about Centauri biology. It wasn't much, but it was something. I'm a doctor. That means I help people. All people. Even when it's hard. Even when it's complicated. She knelt down again and began carefully examining the woman, her scanner moving over every inch. The readings were getting worse. Whatever was happening inside this woman's mind, her body was shutting down in response. This wasn't just trauma. This was something deeper. Something dangerous. Laura's hands moved quickly, checking vitals, taking notes on her scanner. She had no idea if she could really help. She'd never treated a Centauri before. She might make things worse. But she'd made a promise to a terrified child. And Laura Hayes never broke her promises. Laura half-carried, half-dragged the floating medical stretcher through the corridors of Meridian Station. Torin ran alongside her, his small hand gripping the edge of the stretcher where his mother lay still and silent. The station's automated systems had taken over the stretcher's movement, but Laura kept one hand on it anyway, guiding it toward the medical wing. The doors to Station Medical slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the waiting area was nearly empty. A few patients sat in chairs, nursing minor injuries or waiting for routine checkups. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Everything was clean and bright and organized. Laura rushed to the reception desk. A Trilaxian nurse looked up from her screen, her 3 eyes blinking in sequence. Emergency, Laura said quickly. Centauri female unresponsive. Neural activity declining. I need a trauma bay immediately. The nurse's eyes flickered to the stretcher, then to her screen. Her fingers moved across the controls. What's the nature of the emergency? She's in a coma. Witnessed a violent robbery. She's been unconscious for over 30 minutes and her condition is worsening. Centauri protective coma? The nurse asked. Yes, but it's not resolving normally. She's deteriorating. The nurse's expression didn't change. I'll page Dr. Venn. Please wait here. Wait? Did you hear what I said? She's getting worse. Dr. Hayes, I recognize you from the Colony Medical Bay. The nurse's voice was calm, almost maddeningly so. Protocol requires that I inform the attending physician before admitting emergency cases. Especially for non-human species. Please wait. Laura wanted to argue, but she knew it would waste time. She stepped back, her hands clenched into fists. Torin pressed close to his mother's stretcher, whispering to her in his own language. The words were soft and musical like wind chimes. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Laura checked her scanner again. The woman's temperature had dropped another degree. Her heart rate was down to 30 beats per minute. Finally, Dr. Venn appeared. He was human, middle-aged, with gray streaks in his dark hair. Laura had met him once at a station medical conference. He'd seemed competent enough then. Dr. Hayes, he said, glancing at his tablet. The nurse says you have a Centauri patient in crisis? Yes. Look at these readings. Laura thrust her scanner toward him. She's been in a protective coma for 40 minutes. Her neural activity is dropping. This isn't normal. Dr. Venn studied the scanner, his brow furrowed. These readings are concerning, I'll admit. But Centauri biology is highly specialized. We don't have the proper equipment or training to treat her here. So what do you suggest? Laura asked, though she already knew the answer. We'll make her comfortable and monitor her vitals. I've already sent a priority message to the Zentari Medical Council. They're dispatching a specialist, but it will take at least 3 days for them to arrive. 3 days. Laura's voice cracked. She'll be dead in 3 days. Maybe less. I understand your concern, but we can't risk treating her improperly. Zentari physiology is drastically different from human. Their nervous systems, their cellular structure, even their blood chemistry. If we attempt treatment without proper knowledge, we could kill her. Dr. Ven's voice was firm but not unkind. There are liability issues. Legal ramifications. I'm sorry, but my hands are tied. Laura looked down at Torin. The boy had heard everything. His face had gone pale, his glass-like skin almost transparent with fear. Please, Torin whispered. Please don't let her die. Dr. Ven sighed. We'll do everything we can within our capabilities. That's all I can promise. He turned and walked back toward his office. Laura stood there, frozen with frustration and anger. Around her, the medical wing continued its quiet routine. Patients came and went. Nurses made their rounds. Nobody seemed to care that a woman was dying just a few meters away. Come on, Laura said quietly to Torin. She began pushing the stretcher toward a corner of the waiting area. We're not giving up. She settled Torin's mother into a monitoring alcove, then pulled out her personal tablet. Her fingers flew across the screen, accessing the station's medical database. She pulled up everything she could find on Zentari biology. The information was limited. Zentari were a relatively peaceful species from a quiet world called Zentau Prime. Their bodies had evolved with unique crystalline structures that made them beautiful but fragile. They were susceptible to emotional trauma in ways most species weren't. When faced with extreme stress or violence, their nervous systems would shut down, putting them in a protective coma until they felt safe again. That was the theory anyway. But Laura had seen cases like this before. Not in Zentari but in humans. She thought about soldiers returning from war. About victims of violent crimes. About people who'd witnessed terrible things. Sometimes the mind didn't just protect itself. Sometimes it got stuck. Trapped in the moment of trauma, unable to escape even when the danger was long gone. What if that was happening to Torin's mother? Laura's fingers moved faster, pulling up human psychiatric studies. Information on trauma loops. On how the brain could convince itself that danger was still present even when surrounded by safety. On how fear could become a prison. What are you doing? Torin asked. He'd been watching her quietly, his hands still holding his mother's cold fingers. Research, Laura said. Torin, when your father went into his protective coma, what happened? How did he wake up? Torin thought for a moment. He was unconscious for maybe an hour. Then he just opened his eyes. He said he'd been dreaming. That he was back home on Zentau Prime in our old house. He said he felt safe there so he could wake up. Safe, Laura repeated. The word echoed in her mind. Torin, do you think your mother feels safe right now? The boy looked around at the cold medical wing, at the strange aliens passing by, at the harsh artificial lights. No, he said quietly. She doesn't know where she is. In her mind she might still think the bad men are there. Still think she's in danger. Laura felt something click into place. That's it, she breathed. She's trapped. Her conscious mind shut down to protect her, but her subconscious still thinks she's in danger. It won't let her wake up because it believes waking up means facing the threat. Can you help her? Torin's voice was so small, so hopeful. Laura looked at her tablet. At the data on human trauma therapy. At the limited information on Zentari neurology. At the gap between them that seemed impossibly wide. This was insane. She wasn't a psychiatrist. She wasn't a Zentari specialist. She'd never attempted anything like this before. If she tried and failed, she could make things worse. She could damage Torin's mother's mind permanently. She could kill her. But if she did nothing, the woman would die anyway. Laura thought about Dr. Ven's words. About liability. About protocols. About doing everything within their capabilities. Then she looked at Torin. At his desperate, crystalline eyes. Yes, Laura said. The word came out stronger than she felt. I'm going to help her. But Torin, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to do, it's experimental. It's never been tried before. I'm going to combine human medical techniques with what I know about Zentari biology. It might not work. But you'll try? Torin asked. I'll try, Laura promised. I'll need your help though. Can you be brave for your mother? Torin nodded, squeezing his mother's hand tighter. Laura took a deep breath. Then she began pulling equipment from the medical supply cabinets. Dr. Ven wouldn't approve this. Station regulations definitely didn't allow it. She was about to risk her career, maybe even face criminal charges. But sometimes Lyra thought protocols weren't enough. Sometimes you had to trust your instincts. Sometimes you had to break the rules to save a life. She just hoped she was right. Lyra worked quickly in the small monitoring alcove, her hands moving with practiced precision despite the fear thrumming through her veins. She pulled every piece of biofeedback equipment she could find from the medical supply room. Sensors. Neural monitors. Equipment designed for human patients experiencing anxiety and trauma disorders. Equipment that had never been used on a Centauri before. "Talk to me about your mother," Lyra said to Torin as she carefully attached sensors to the woman's temples. "What is she like? What makes her happy?" Torin sat cross-legged on the floor beside the stretcher, his eyes never leaving his mother's face. "She likes singing. We sing together every night before sleep. Old songs from Zental Prime. Songs her mother taught her." "That's good," Lyra said, adjusting the equipment. "What else?" "She likes the sound of rain. Real rain, not the artificial kind on stations. She tells me stories about home. About the crystal forests where the trees sing when wind passes through them." Torin's voice grew softer. "She says one day we'll go back. When we have enough money. She says I'll see where I was born." Lyra's scanner showed the woman's neural patterns. They were chaotic, spiking and falling in irregular waves. It looked exactly like a human brain trapped in a fear response. The amygdala equivalent was overactive. The sections that processed safety and calm were nearly dark. She was drowning in fear even in sleep. Lyra pulled up the biofeedback program on her tablet. Normally, this technology helped patients see their own stress responses in real time. It taught them to recognize and control their fear. But this patient couldn't see anything, couldn't respond consciously. Lyra would have to bridge the gap differently. "Torin," she said gently, "I need you to do something very important. I need you to talk to your mother. Tell her she's safe. Tell her about home. About the things she loves. Can you do that?" "But she can't hear me," Torin said, confusion clouding his young face. "Her conscious mind can't," Lyra explained. "But her subconscious might. The deep part of her brain that's keeping her asleep, that's trying to protect her. We need to convince that part that the danger is over. That she can come back." She finished attaching the last sensor. The equipment hummed softly, reading the woman's neural activity and translating it into patterns on Lyra's screen. She made careful adjustments, recalibrating the sensors to account for Centauri biology. It was guesswork, really. Educated guesswork based on everything she'd read, but guesswork nonetheless. "Okay," Lyra said. "Start talking to her. Hold her hand. Let her feel that you're here." Torin reached out and wrapped both his small hands around his mother's larger one. He took a shaky breath. "Mother," he whispered. "It's me. It's Torin. You're safe now. The bad men are gone. We're in the medical wing. Dr. Lyra is helping you. Nothing happened." The neural patterns on Lyra's screen continued their chaotic dance. "Keep going," Lyra urged. "Tell her about home." Torin's voice grew stronger. "Do you remember the crystal forest, Mother? You told me about the trees that sing. You said when I was a baby you took me there. You said the trees sang me a welcome song." Lyra watched the screen intently. Was that a small change? A slight smoothing in one of the wave patterns? She couldn't be sure. Hours passed. Torin talked until his voice grew hoarse. He told his mother about their apartment on the station. About his lessons at school. About the friend he'd made who was from a species with 4 arms. Lyra brought him water and encouraged him to keep going. "Sing to her," Lyra suggested. "You said she likes singing?" Torin hesitated, then began to sing. The words were in his native language, musical and strange. The melody was simple but beautiful, like water flowing over stones. It was a lullaby, Lyra realized. A song for children. As Torin sang, something changed. Lyra saw it on her screen first. The chaotic neural patterns began to slow. To organize. The fear centers in the woman's brain began to quiet, just slightly. "It's working," Lyra breathed. "Keep singing, Torin. Don't stop." But the door to the alcove suddenly slid open. Dr. Venn stood there, his face red with anger. Behind him were 2 security officers. "Dr. Hayes, what do you think you're doing?" His voice was sharp. "You're using unauthorized equipment on a patient without proper clearance. This ends now." "I'm saving her life," Lyra said, not moving from her position. "Look at the readings. She's responding." "You're experimenting on a dying woman." Dr. Venn stepped forward. "This equipment isn't rated for Centauri use. You could be causing permanent neural damage. I'm shutting this down immediately. No. Torin cried out, clutching his mother's hand tighter. Please? It's working. Don't stop. One of the security officers reached for the equipment. Lyra stepped between them and the machines. Give me 36 hours, she said. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her chest. If there's no improvement by then, I'll stop. But right now she's responding to treatment. Look at the neural scans. The fear response is decreasing. Dr. Venn glanced at the screen. His expression wavered for just a moment. 36 hours, Lyra repeated. That's less time than it would take for your Zentari specialist to arrive anyway. What do you have to lose? My medical license if this goes wrong, Dr. Venn muttered. But he held up a hand, stopping the security officers. Fine. 36 hours. But I'm monitoring this personally. One sign that you're causing harm and I pull the plug. Understood. Understood, Lyra said. Dr. Venn and the security officers left. Lyra's legs felt weak with relief, but she couldn't rest now. She turned back to Torin. That was very brave, she said. Keep singing. We're not done yet. The hours blurred together. Torin sang every song he knew, then sang them again. He talked about memories with his mother. About the day they left Zental Prime. About his father. About their dreams for the future. Lyra monitored the equipment constantly, making tiny adjustments, watching the neural patterns shift and change. Other medical staff came to watch. Some shook their heads in disapproval. Others looked curious. A few whispered encouragement when Dr. Venn wasn't looking. 20 hours passed. Then 30. Torin had fallen asleep, his head resting on the edge of the stretcher, his hand still holding his mother's. Lyra had drunk so much coffee she'd lost count. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. The equipment suddenly beeped. Lyra's head snapped up. On the screen, the neural patterns were changing. The fear centers were quieting. The areas associated with conscious thought were lighting up. Slowly, like dawn breaking. Torin, Lyra said urgently, shaking the boy's shoulder. Wake up. Something's happening. Torin's eyes opened. He sat up, looking at his mother. The woman's fingers twitched. Her crystalline skin began to brighten, the cloudy dullness fading. Color returned to her glass-like features. Her chest rose with a deeper breath. Then her eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, confused. They moved around the room, taking in the medical equipment, the strange surroundings. Fear began to cloud them again. Mother. Torin grabbed her hand with both of his. Mother, it's me. You're safe. You're safe. The woman's eyes found her son's face. Recognition flooded through them. The fear melted away. Her lips moved, forming words that came out as barely a whisper. Torin? My sweet boy. I'm here, Mother. I'm right here. The woman's hand lifted weakly, touching her son's cheek. Tears streamed down both their faces, crystalline and bright. Lyra stepped back, her own eyes wet. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the equipment, at the readings showing stable neural activity. Showing consciousness returning. It had worked. Against all odds, against all protocols, it had worked. Dr. Venn appeared in the doorway. He looked at the readings, at the conscious patient, at Lyra. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he spoke. I'll need a full report on your methods, Dr. Hayes. Every detail. Lyra nodded, too exhausted to speak. That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever seen, Dr. Venn continued. I haven't decided which yet. But Lyra wasn't listening anymore. She was watching Torin and his mother, their foreheads pressed together, speaking softly in their native language. She'd kept her promise. That was all that mattered. The news spread through Meridian Station like wildfire. Within days, every Zentari living on the station knew the story. A human doctor had saved one of their own when no one else would help. She had used strange methods, equipment never meant for Zentari bodies, and somehow brought a dying woman back from the edge. Lyra didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted and worried. Torin's mother, whose name was Lyra, recovered slowly in the medical wing. Her color had returned fully now, her glass-like skin shimmering with health. She could speak and move, though she tired easily. Torin rarely left her side, curled up in a chair next to her bed. Other Zentari began visiting. At first just one or two. Then more. They brought gifts of food and flowers. They thanked Lyra with tears in their crystalline eyes. Some told stories of relatives who had entered protective comas and never woken up. Others spoke of loved ones who had died alone while waiting for specialists who arrived too late. You did what no one else has done, an elderly Zentari man told Lyra one afternoon. His skin was aged and slightly cracked like old glass. You refused to give up. You saw past our differences and treated her like she mattered. Laura didn't know what to say to that. She did matter, she said simply. She still does. But not everyone was grateful. 3 weeks after Lyra woke up, Laura received an official summons. She was to appear before the Interstellar Medical Review Board. The message was formal and cold, listing violations of protocol, unauthorized treatment of non-certified species, and reckless endangerment of a patient. Laura sat in her quarters, staring at the summons on her tablet. Her hands trembled slightly. This was what she'd known would happen. What she'd risked from the beginning. But seeing it in writing made it real in a way that frightened her. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Lyra standing there, leaning on Torrens' shoulder for support. They were both dressed formally, in traditional Zentari clothing that sparkled like starlight. "Dr. Hayes," Lyra said. Her voice was soft but steady. "May we come in?" Laura stepped aside, gesturing them into her small quarters. Lyra settled carefully onto the couch. Torrens sat beside her, his hand in hers. "I heard about the review board," Lyra said. "I want to testify on your behalf." "You don't have to do that," Laura said quickly. "You're still recovering. The stress could what? Put me back in a coma?" Lyra's smile was gentle but sad. "Dr. Hayes, I am alive because of you. Because you saw me as a person worth saving when everyone else saw only complications and liability. I will testify. I must." "They might not listen," Laura warned. "Medical boards care about rules and procedures. They don't always care about outcomes." "Then I will make them listen," Lyra said. There was steel in her voice now. "Do you know what it's like, Dr. Hayes, to be trapped in your own mind?" Laura shook her head. "I was aware in some way. Not conscious but present. I could feel the fear surrounding me like walls. I could sense that I was in danger, that I needed to hide deeper to protect myself. But I couldn't find my way out. It was like being in a maze with no exit. Every path led back to the fear." Lyra's eyes grew distant. Then I heard Torrens' voice. At first it was far away like an echo. But it grew closer. Stronger. He was singing our songs. Telling me I was safe. And slowly I found I could believe him. The walls began to crack. Light came through. The biofeedback equipment helped guide the process, Laura explained. It allowed me to see when your fear responses were decreasing, when your brain was ready to accept safety. But Torrens did the real work. His voice was the anchor that pulled you back. "Yes," Lyra agreed. "But you understood what was needed. You understood that our bodies and minds work together. That healing isn't just physical." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Dr. Hayes, do you know why no one else helped me? Dr. Venn said they didn't have the right training. The right equipment." "That's part of it," Lyra said. "But there's more. Zentari evolved on a peaceful world. We have no history of war. No history of violence. When my people developed space travel and met other species, we were shocked to learn about trauma. About how minds can break from fear and pain. We had no framework for understanding it." Laura began to see where this was going. "Zentari medicine is advanced in many ways," Lyra continued. "We can heal physical injuries that would kill most species. But psychological trauma? We barely understand it. When someone enters a protective coma, we wait. We assume their mind will heal itself given time. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. We accept these deaths as natural, unavoidable. But they're not," Laura said quietly. "No, they're not. And you knew that. You knew it because humans understand trauma in ways peaceful species don't." Lyra leaned forward. "Your species comes from a harsh world. You have wars, violence, suffering. You've built entire fields of medicine around healing minds broken by fear. You understand in your bones what it means to survive horror and carry it with you." Laura thought about Earth, about human history, about all the terrible things her species had done to each other and survived. She'd never thought of it as an advantage before. "When I testify," Lyra said, "I will tell them this. I will tell them that sometimes the ability to heal comes from understanding pain. That sometimes the outsider sees solutions that insiders cannot." 2 weeks later, Laura stood in front of the medical review board. The room was cold and formal. 5 board members sat at a raised desk, looking down at her. Their species varied: 2 humans, a Trilaxian, a Vorgoth, and a species Laura didn't recognize. All of them looked stern and unmoved. Dr. Venn sat to one side, ready to give testimony. Laura's supervisor from the colony medical bay sat on the other side, looking uncomfortable. In the gallery behind Laura, she could feel dozens of eyes watching. Zentari families. Other doctors. Station administrators. The head board member, a human woman with silver hair, read the charges. Unauthorized treatment. Violation of species-specific medical protocols. Reckless endangerment. The list went on and on. Each word felt like a weight on Laura's chest. Dr. Hayes, the woman said finally, how do you plead to these charges? Laura took a breath. I don't deny what I did. I treated a patient using methods that weren't approved. I used equipment in ways it wasn't designed for. I took risks. Then you admit to the violations? I admit to saving a life when no one else would, Laura said. Her voice was steady. I admit to seeing a terrified child and refusing to walk away. I admit to believing that sometimes compassion matters more than procedure. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The board members exchanged glances. We have a witness who wishes to speak, the silver-haired woman said. Lyra of Zental Prime. Lyra stood. She walked to the front of the room without assistance now, her recovery nearly complete. Torrens sat in the front row watching his mother with pride. I wish to tell you why I am alive, Lyra said to the board. And why only a human could have saved me. She began to speak. Laura listened along with everyone else in the room. Lyra spoke of trauma and fear. Of peaceful species and violent worlds. Of the strange gift that came from surviving hardship. The knowledge of how to help others survive it too. When she finished, the room was silent. Even the board members looked moved. Laura didn't know if it would be enough. But for the first time since receiving the summons, she felt hope. The silver-haired board member leaned forward in her seat. Her eyes were fixed on Lyra, who stood straight and confident before them despite having nearly died just weeks ago. You claim that only a human could have saved you, the board member said. That's a bold statement. Please explain. Lyra nodded slowly. May I tell you about my world? Proceed. Zental Prime is a peaceful place. Beautiful. Our skies are violet, our forests are made of crystal that sings in the wind. In 10,000 years of recorded history, my people have never had a war. We have no word in our language for murder. When we first met other species and learned about violence, about killing, we thought they were telling us fiction. Stories to frighten children. Lyra's voice was calm but sad. We couldn't understand how intelligent beings could harm each other. One of the board members, the Vorgoth with thick gray skin, spoke up. What does this have to do with medical treatment? Everything, Lyra said. When Zentari witness violence, our bodies shut down. It's a biological response we evolved for different purposes, but it serves as protection against something we cannot mentally process. We enter comas because our minds have no framework for understanding what we've seen. We retreat into ourselves and wait for the world to make sense again. She paused, looking at each board member in turn. Zentari medicine is advanced. We can regrow limbs. We can cure diseases that kill other species. But trauma? Psychological damage from fear and violence? We barely understand these concepts. When someone enters a protective coma, we have no treatment. We can only wait and hope they find their way back. Many don't. Laura watched Lyra speak. She stood near the back of the room, her hands clasped tightly together. Her whole career balanced on what happened in the next few minutes. Dr. Hayes didn't wait, Lyra continued. She looked at me and saw something my own people couldn't see. She recognized that I was trapped in a fear loop. That my subconscious mind believed I was still in danger. She understood this because humans know trauma. They know it deeply. The silver-haired board member frowned. Are you suggesting that human medicine is superior to Zentari medicine? No, Lyra said quickly. I'm saying it's different. Humans come from Earth. I've read about your world. It's harsh, dangerous, full of predators and disasters. Humans evolved fighting for survival every single day. You developed violence, yes, but you also developed ways to heal from violence. You had to, or your species would have destroyed itself. She gestured toward Laura. Dr. Hayes has knowledge that comes from thousands of years of human suffering. Knowledge about how minds break and how to fix them. She has fields of study, psychology, psychiatry, trauma therapy, that exist because humans needed them to survive their own nature. Peaceful species like mine never developed these things. We never needed to. The Trilaxian board member spoke, her three eyes blinking in sequence. But Dr. Hayes used equipment designed for humans on a Zentari patient. She had no way of knowing if it would work. She could have caused permanent brain damage. She could have, Lyra agreed. But she understood the underlying principle. Fear is fear whether you're human or Zentari. The brain's response to danger follows patterns. She adapted human treatment methods to my biology. She combined her species' deep understanding of trauma with careful observation of my condition. And most importantly, she didn't give up when everyone else did. Lyra felt tears prickling at her eyes. She blinked them back. Torrin suddenly stood up in the gallery. His young voice rang out clear and strong. She saved my mother when no one else cared. Young man, please sit down, the silver-haired board member said, but her voice wasn't harsh. No. Torrin's hands were clenched into fists. Everyone walked past us. Security said it was normal. The doctors said they couldn't help. Everyone had reasons why they couldn't do anything. But Dr. Lyra stopped. She looked at my mother like she mattered. Like she was worth saving even if it was hard. The board members looked at each other. Lyra could see something shifting in their expressions. The stern disapproval was softening just slightly. Dr. Venn stood up from his seat. Lyra's heart sank. He was going to argue against her. He was going to... I'd like to speak, Dr. Venn said. The board nodded. I was angry with Dr. Hayes, Dr. Venn said. I thought she was being reckless. Endangering a patient. Breaking every protocol we have. He paused. I was wrong. Lyra's eyes widened. Dr. Hayes did something I failed to do, Dr. Venn continued. She saw past the regulations and focused on the patient. Yes, she took risks. Yes, she used equipment in unorthodox ways. But she did so carefully. She monitored every response. She adjusted her treatment based on the patient's condition. And she succeeded where our protocols would have let the patient die. He turned to look at Lyra. I've reviewed her methods in detail. I've studied the neural scans and treatment logs. What she did was brilliant. She identified that Zentari protective comas are essentially fear-based dissociative states. She recognized the similarities to human trauma responses. And she adapted existing treatment protocols to address a problem in an alien species. That's not recklessness. That's innovative medicine. The room was completely silent now. The silver-haired board member looked at her fellow members. They leaned together, speaking in low voices. Minutes passed. Lyra felt like she couldn't breathe. Finally, the board member straightened. Dr. Lyra Hayes, this board finds that while you did violate established protocols, you did so with careful consideration and sound medical reasoning. Your treatment, though unorthodox, was ultimately successful and has provided valuable insights into treating cross-species trauma. She paused. The charges against you are dismissed. Furthermore, this board recommends that you be granted a special certification to continue researching and treating trauma-based conditions in non-human species. Lyra's knees went weak. She grabbed the railing in front of her for support. However, the board member continued, you will be required to document your methods thoroughly and work with xenobiologists to develop proper protocols. This cannot remain an improvised treatment. It must become a recognized medical practice. I understand, Lyra managed to say. Thank you. The hearing ended. People swarmed around Lyra. Centauri families thanked her with tears in their eyes. Other doctors shook her hand, asking questions about her methods. Torrin crashed into her, hugging her tightly. Lyra embraced her more carefully, whispering thanks in her musical language. 6 months later, Lyra stood in the entrance of the Meridian Station Cross-Species Trauma Center. The sign above the door gleamed in the station lights. Inside, the waiting room was already filling up with patients. Not just Centauri now, but other species who had suffered psychological damage and found no help in their own medicine. Lyra had a team now. Human psychiatrists trained in her methods. Xenobiologists who helped adapt treatments for different species. Specialists from peaceful worlds learning about trauma for the first time. The door chimed. Lyra looked up to see Torrin entering with his mother. They visited every week now. Torrin was doing well in school. Lyra had returned to her work as an artist, creating beautiful crystal sculptures that decorated the clinic's walls. Dr. Lyra? Torrin ran up to her, grinning. I brought something for you. He handed her a small crystal sculpture. It showed 2 figures, one clearly Zentari, one human, reaching toward each other. Their hands were joined in the middle. Mother made it, Torrin said proudly. She says it's called the bridge. Lyra held the sculpture carefully. Light refracted through it, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. It's perfect, she said softly. She thought back to that day in the station concourse. To a desperate child's cry that everyone ignored. To the moment she chose to stop, to help, to refuse to walk away no matter the cost. That single choice had changed everything. It had nearly cost her career, but it had also opened doors she never knew existed. It had shown her that sometimes the greatest healing came from understanding pain. That sometimes the outsider could see solutions that insiders missed. And it had taught her that being human, coming from a harsh, violent, difficult world, wasn't just a burden to carry. It was also a gift. A painful gift, bought with thousands of years of suffering. But a gift nonetheless. The gift of knowing how to survive darkness. And more importantly, the gift of knowing how to help others find their way back to the light. Lyra placed the crystal sculpture on her desk where she could see it every day. Then she turned to greet her first patient of the morning. There was work to do. There were minds to heal. There were people who needed someone to refuse to give up on them. And Lyra Hayes never walked away from someone who needed help. Never again.